Welcome to a fine gaming experience, everyone. It's This Way Lies Madness, or Bricks as you may know me. I have that voice in my head here again.
That's all I am, just a little voice in the head.
But a useful voice with lots of advice. So I changed up the intro here since we're actually in the Wildspire Waste. And speaking of changing up things, I'm going to get rid of that little rabbit lupus thing we have.
Lagomorph.
Lagomorph.
I think it's a lagomorph.
Jackalope.
I don't think it's a jackalope.
So I'll get some pretty butterflies instead.
Have you ever had a butterfly land in your mouth?
No, although I did have a cousin who got stung on the tongue with a bee.
Yeah, I think everybody's known somebody who got stung somewhere weird by either a bee or a hornet or a wasp. It's a rite of passage.
I got stung in the ear once.
Head to the Wildspire
Oh.
Waste immediately.
That's a real Monster Hunter problem.
So as you can see, I'm changing up my weapon here. And there's that giant piece of Magda poop we got last time.
My question is, did they airlift that out here using some of the pterodactyl things? Like, did they actually just hoist the whole thing up and just drop it, or was it a lot of carts?
They put it in the cart and had those tiny people drag it here.
That seems unlikely, but I'll go with it.
And he just gave me my first capture mission there to go capture a Kulu. And what I like about those kind of quests is that they will give you the capture tools right at the start.
And which at the start of the game, you actually don't have a lot of the things you need for captures. A lot of the capture items, unfortunately, come in the zone we're in right now, and the zone post this one. So the next one we go to will have a lot of good items to make our capture.
We got some new armor to show off here as well. This one is quite different between male and female. The male set is like super bulky, heavily fortified.
Very good if you like blocking and have a shield weapon.
Quite a difference though, eh? She's got the open-faced helmet, doesn't have the huge pauldrons on the side. I really like this armor set though. Guard is always handy for shield users. Stamina Thief I love using as a hammer user. Ditto with Marathon Runner. Muck Resistance isn't too handy, but useful against what we're about to fight. And Stun Resistance will stop me from waggling my head in stunness.
Stun resistance can be very good, especially for new players.
Here's another one that looks quite different between male and female.
Absolutely love the look of the brigade armor.
Ditto. It is really cool. He's got the rapier on the side and everything. The female version, though, looks like she's a waitress on a plane. And the skills on it are very odd. It's kind of a defensive set.
I like to call it a low-level set. It has a lot of skills that are somewhat useful from the earlier missions in the game.
Well, heavy artillery, for example, is one that's very unusual at this point. It helps with cannons and whatnot, but you're not going to see that for a little bit yet. And the Gajau pants. I did say I would hunt them down between the episodes here. And when I first started playing, I hated how much water will slow you down. So I was absolutely in love with this set, just because it makes you move a little better in water. And
That's new?
yep, polar.
That must be something that was an addition. Before it was just aquatic mobility, but I guess they combine those two abilities because by themselves they're really not that good.
And our little Palico buddy gets to look like a chess piece, basically.
I think it's one of the cutest sets out there, because yeah, they look like a little rook.
It's not a bad one either, because it adds more defense for them. That's one thing with the Barrel set, is any weapons will give you more defense for equipping them, but they tend to have lower affinity, so you won't critical as much.
One thing I did want to talk about with affinity We'll talk about it in just a little bit, because something important you're doing right here...
Comparing all the different lances right now, and like, the first one has a ton of attack power, and we're going to actually upgrade the iron lance we have. And we have some different options here. Because I could do the Kulu lance and get a very high critical rate. It has 15% affinity on it. But I'm going to go for the Puke lance and get us some poison.
It has an extremely high poison rate, one of the highest in the game for a weapon you get this early. And one of the great things about the lance is it is a rapid attack weapon, so you will actually get poison on things quite often once you're experienced with the lance.
Which is one of the reasons why I wanted to try it out here. And there's the Baroth set, which you can see gives me even more defense. A whopping negative 25 to affinity, though, is kind of crappy. It does have good attack power to start, so it's not bad, but getting those negative criticals are kind of annoying.
And that's one thing I wanted to say. Affinity, especially negative affinity, is a big deal at the earlier parts of the game, but later on, when you have enough sources to actually build your affinity up, the Baroth weapons and other affinity-lowering weapons are some of the highest static damage weapons you will ever see. Highly recommended for a lot of high-level play.
And I really like how this lance looks now that it got the Puke feathers added to it. You can kind of see how it takes the base weapon and just adds a few flourishes to it. And more canteen ingredients.
Get used to talking to all your people after quests. Look out those exclamation marks and find them.
Pretty basic though, just hunt down some little creatures that you'll probably want anyways, just for the armor sets and whatnot.
We have an emergency.
Time to go rescue that scholar that got lost.
He got eaten. I can almost guarantee, eaten.
He really should have been. Like, if you're someone without a weapon, even in the first area, we nearly got killed by Jagras.
I will say, Monster Hunter is one of those very interesting games in that the tongue-in-cheek humor and the silliness of it takes away from the raw, visceral idea of what we're doing. I think that's important, because if you consider the danger that we're in all the time in Monster Hunter, it would be a very different, very dark game if it didn't have that kind of feeling to it.
Let's look for the scholar. He must have left.
Well, we're not exactly hunting Cthulhu-esque nightmares from beyond reality. Luckily.
Yet. Never give up hope. They really like their crossovers.
One of the latest ones crossed over with Raccoon City, although I'm not quite sure what it added from that, so I'm curious to see how that one went. And we have little unknown footprints we can follow, but if you see that green dot over there, I'm going to check that out here in a second.
Did they add a new canteen recipe, the Jill sandwich?
I'm guessing it'll be a new layered set of armor, but peanut butter and Jill sandwich.
Peanut butter and Jill sandwich. They probably would go that far. Oh, the dance.
Yep. And that's what I wanted to show off, is because I'm not playing multiplayer, I can recruit additional palicos. If I had guild cards from other people, they would show up with their palicos in my single-player game.
Guild cards are very important. One thing, whenever you play online with anybody, make sure you hop into your menu and look up the area that has social information like guild cards. Because those are going to allow you to get that person's palico in your missions. In a lot of cases, a lot of things later on in the game reference other players. It's kind of like a loose multiplayer aspect.
It's basically how you identify yourself to other players. It's a little, here's my blurb. And it has art and like little titles you can get from defeating certain creatures you can put on there as well. This is interesting because we're finding the footprints of the scholar, but we found some weird spikes. There's a carcass from something that got killed here. It's one of those herbivores from earlier.
I do appreciate they let you gather even if you're going to fight things.
Even though I'm not going to fight them. Just kidding. The lance is an interesting weapon. It's very centered on doing repetitive light damage over and over and over again. At least in my experience. And this is a weird choice for the weapon just because the poison one specializes on doing the poison damage. So its base attack power isn't that strong. But I will poison almost anything in a few hits.
I'm going to give a big 3 points up and 3 points down for the lance, just so everyone has an idea. Like you mentioned, it is a fast-attacking weapon. That's a point up. The point down is that requires a lot of sharpening. Another point up for the lance is it's very defensive in both its hops, which you can actually do these little hops instead of rolls, and its blocking. Another point up for the lance, something that I've always enjoyed, is it's a very much counter-based weapon. So once you learn monsters, you actually feel very powerful. You can stand in the face of pretty much anything and survive. It is slow, though. And it is slower than even the slow weapons in the game, simply because you're going to have your shield out in front of you, and it doesn't quickly react to a lot outside of its counters. And the last big problem with the lance is its learning curve is very high. There are a lot of moves to learn, and like I said, knowing monsters is very important.
I wouldn't actually say it has a huge move pool, but it does have some unique moves you really want to learn.
Is that the scholar? What's that he's sitting next to?
Yes.
A Barroth?
There's our target.
We know that because there's a green dot above their head.
And yes, he is sitting beside a dead Barroth covered in spikes.
God, don't let him find me. Don't let him find me.
Maybe he did run into one of those Cthulhu-esque nightmare creatures.
I was about to say, we are visiting the Far Realm right now.
No, the Juratotus, that didn't kill the Barroth. It was,
It's a little annoying that he saw what killed the creature but doesn't actually tell us, but it was not the Juratotus which we're about to fight.
Not a monster I'm a fan of at all.
Well, this creature alone is one of the reasons I absolutely had to get those water movement pants. And using the lance was kind of a bad choice for this fight just because the water will slow me down and the lance doesn't have a ton of maneuverability. There's a few times here I'll try to dodge and I will go into one of those mud balls he spits out. He is also like Barroth and will use mud to armor himself. You're going to see multiple times where I have broken a part of him, but it's just me breaking off his armor.
Well, that was the counter hit right there. You charge up, the monster hits you, you will go off quickly and hit them, get a block off. It's very, very potent. You get the whole thing off, that poke does a lot of damage.
I really like the counter for this, and it's very quick and easy to pull off. Sometimes I will go into the counter stance instead of just the guard stance, because why not?
And that's actually good lance play. That's highly recommended. Guarding is essentially something you are not going to be doing that often with the lance, unless there's something you just can't get out of the way of. Think of it as kind of like sword and shield, except your shield is actually good.
Now, if you see that purple liquid coming out of his mouth there, that means the Juratotus is poisoned. And this is only doing 8 damage a tick to him, so he must have some resistance.
Yeah, that unfortunately is resistance. But I think everybody has been waiting for you to have a fight where your superior skills are tested with an inferior weapon. So this should be a lot of fun.
One of the reasons I'm very gung-ho about picking up those puddle pods again is they are water elemental. And water elemental attacks will actually wash off the mud armor he's using. I don't have any water elemental weapons, so having something I can just toss into the armor is pretty handy. But he can re-armor himself at any time by doing a little circular wash in the mud again, which we just saw a little while ago.
Water blight. That's gonna put a damper on your stamina recovery.
Well, Lance has 2 straight attacks. It's got a straight forward and a straight up. And you seem to have a good command of those.
The slightly higher angled one does do a little bit more damage, and right there I switch up to it. What I like about it is you can switch between the straightforward and higher angle attacks on it. I was expecting him to charge me there. And then he charges here.
Now you'll notice the blue stamina bar. That's actually a fairly important status. It's not terrible, but it does lower your overall stamina recharge rate, so you have to watch your stamina. It goes away practically all the time, and the only way to get rid of that, I believe, is with a very specific item.
Time also works, but we could also have enough water resistance. It wouldn't happen to us.
Yeah, I think that's water blight. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. That was an excellent poke.
It's one thing I like about some of those hits is you'll get multiple hits off. Right there, I keep trying to go for the mount attack, and I never actually get it off, but that quick triple poke is great for getting the poison off. You also have the variant attack there where you can do a shield bash instead. So even though you have piercing damage that can slice off the tails and whatnot, you can still stun with your shield, which is really handy.
I'm actually a huge fan of using this weapon to take off tails. It's very precise. There was a charge attack, and the technique, it's a little bit more of an advanced technique that he was talking about there. The ability to mount, it requires doing a charge attack, holding specifically towards the monster, doing a jump, and then striking it. I'm very good at it, but it took me a long time of practicing. I believe I played Monster Hunter at this point with several different people on several different systems, and I played Lance on every single one. So that's what I mean when Monster Hunter has this depth in its control over a weapon. You will really see improvements hundreds of hours into gameplay. So there's nothing wrong with playing the same weapon, but mix it up every once in a while.
Some of the weapons have a really big learning curve, though. Oh, my good swinging here.
Ah, top swings. Well done. Hopefully we'll see some of those weapons. I'm going to assume you're going to be showing off the charge blade and the insect glaive, because those are, in my opinions, the most complex weapons in the game.
I had recently posted in the thread that I'm going to be doing a 2-episode stretch with most of the weapons. That is my plan, at least. Until I get through most of them, and then once I'm on my core weapons, I will be keeping with them my hammer, my heavy bowgun, whatnot. But some of the weapons have unique properties I would like to show off, and some of them just make boss fights a lot easier. It's one of the reasons I actually got into using the heavy bowgun, because it makes some boss fights so much easier.
There are some monsters we will meet that completely change the way that you play. There's a monster later on, I won't spoil his name, but he is famous for actually destroying a lot of people who don't use ranged weapons. So that's a point in the game you're going to want a ranged weapon.
And even if I had used the lance against Baroth, I would have to be relying on targeting its weak points. The very long reach would probably be hitting the head a lot, causing me problems.
You're pretty consistent with your poison. That's good.
Which is nice. Poisoning will just... It's amazing how much that damage can add up. Even if I'm doing, like, right there, just swinging at the air accidentally, that poison will still be ticking away at him the whole time. I seem to knock him over a lot, too. I'm not sure if that's a trait of knocking off his mud armor, or if I'm just hitting him in the legs enough that it's tripping him. Some attacks the enemies will do as well, if you interrupt them with a strong attack, will tend to knock them over suddenly. It's one of the reasons I absolutely love Hammer, because some of those big attacks, just countering an opponent's attack, looks very nice.
I think a lot of your knockdowns are just because of the repetition of attacks. The lance is just extremely repetitious. You do not let up. You trying?
Yeah, trying to do the charge.
Yeah, trying to do the charge. Now this is the move right here that if you get up to them, if you press the jump, and then follow up with a strike attack, you can get a mount.
Watch how much I miss.
Oh. Oh, you got the turnaround, though. Yeah, you can actually turn around while you're racing with the lance. Honestly, I picked the lance because I hate traveling around the giant maps. I just wanted to rush around with my pointy stick.
The problem I have, since I'm still getting used to the lance, is the quick charge. You can guard and then just tap your 2 buttons and you'll instantly go into your charge. But if you're still holding your guard button, you go into the block move right there. So that's what keeps happening to me. I haven't got the timing quite down yet, but new weapon for me, so. And there we go.
Oh, that was excellent, ending with the stab on the face. Well done. As I said, I'll be nice because, you know, I know you're new at the lance, and I think that's, again, I'm going to mention this multiple times. Being bad at Monster Hunter is perfectly normal, especially when you first start. Being bad at a new weapon is even more normal than that, so don't beat yourself up too much. You'll get the hang of something if you want to. Don't give up because a weapon's too hard, especially if you love the moveset.
The game doesn't punish you too much either for dying. This annoys me right here. I was just off on my timing for that leap attack. He spent way too long underground.
If you had gone for the super block in that point in time, you actually would have knocked him unconscious. It's one of the nice things about that super block.
I don't use it quite enough here, but the super block is very handy, being able to block unblockable attacks. That leap of his, though, if you're knowing where it's going to happen, he leaves himself quite open afterwards for some good attacks.
Oh, he's tired.
Yep. That wasn't his armor, that was actually a part of him I broke.
Oh, nice.
If you watch my stamina here, too, you can see just how much the Water Blight was making some of my moves. Like, that little charge attack where I get the 3 hits off ate almost half my stamina bar from doing it with the Water Blight on.
He got you straight up with the muck there.
Yep. The muck resistance isn't too handy. There's very, very few enemies that use it.
Excellent.
It's more a hindrance than anything.
I did. But I can't shake this feeling that there's something really bad about those thorns.
Yes, there is something very bad about those thorns.
Absolutely. There are a lot of phenomenal players of Monster Hunter, and my opinion is that watching them play can be both a wonderful thing and a bit of a curse. When you watch people who are extremely good with their weapon, it does give you an idea of where you can be, but it's pretty daunting to have to actually hit those standards, so take your time. I think your lance play was actually quite good. And
thank you.
Yeah, I was impressed. There's a couple things that you have problems with, and I will openly admit I sometimes screw up the charge, even now.
Well, that's one of the big jokes I've seen, too, with Monster Hunter in general, even from before World, is just Lance players charging all over the place, missing anything and everything.
Mm-hmm. That's what we do it for. We do it to bump into other players and really just annoy them. That's the whole reason we charge.
Lance seemed pretty good for that, though. Like, some of the weapons will interfere with other players when you're attacking. Outside of the wide sweep that it has, I don't think there's very many moves that will send your party members flying or interrupt their attacks too much.
The worst one is actually if you get them in front of your weapon while you're charging, because you will continually bump them.
Oh, fun.
Yep. Love that stained glass pane.
I had to keep it in because, yes, they point out, we've gotten some more information on Zora, and they've got a plan.
Made great strides towards understanding the tracks that have turned up across the continent. Our researchers have done some projections, and now we know where Zora Magdaros will go next. It's heading for the Great Ravine.
The Great Ravine. The huge valley out past the Wildspire?
Thank you, Madam
Correct.
Exposition.
So I have a proposition for all of you.
I don't understand how it's hard to track a monster that's literally the size of a mountain,
Have you gone mad?
Capture it? Hear
but
me
they want to
out.
capture it.
The ravine is
This
the
seems
perfect
like a
terrain
horrible
for
plan.
staging
Let's
such an
capture
event.
the mountain.
We're not going to get a better chance than this.
If we don't take this opportunity, it could be a decade before the next opportunity presents itself. Maybe longer.
Is it even possible?
If I said it wasn't, would that stop you?
I would hope so.
Give it a go.
Yeah.
With the fifth supporting us,
Let's
a
throw
chance
resources
for
and
a
lives
project.
at this and
Then it's
cross our
time.
fingers.
Before we send the hunters out for the capture, we need to secure Astera. An Anjanath has been active in the area. Not the kind of monster you toy around with. We'll need a plan.
That's bad news.
You're right. Hunters,
But
you have
I
your
will
next
be
assignment.
using the lance next
Take care
time
of
to
that
take on the Anjanath.
But be careful. The
That
Anjanath
big
is a
scary
fearsome
T-Rex
monster.
guy.
One slip up and you're done.
Commander, if I may, I think I have a great idea. Hunter, I could use your help. Drop by later, if you will.
Another thing, that troubling report we received. Think you could?
Right.
Good then. Let's get this show on the road. We have an Elder Dragon to capture. Everyone dismissed.
This game is famous for doing the clutch ending,
We should
where it seems like
probably
you're at the
listen to
end
what
of the
chief
game,
botanist had
and
to
you're
say
not.
before we do
Does that
anything else.
5 times, maybe, throughout the game.
Zora's a pretty good focus, though. A big, scary lava monster. And I feel kind of bad for her neck here. All those butterflies. Oh, butterfly! Oh, there's a butterfly. There's a butterfly. But yes, next time we'll go take on a giant fire-breathing T-Rex. So I hope you all join me for that, and take care all.